Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. My name is Carrie Roberts and today I have two lovely guests. I have Soula Parassidis and Norman Reinhardt. They are both professional opera singers and the owners of Living Opera. So excited to have you both here. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
We're excited
so
to be
happy
here.
to be
Thank
here.
you very much.
Super
Yeah.
awesome.
I want to start, I always like to start kind of with the beginning through people's journeys. And I would love, Soula, if you want to start first.
Sure.
Where was, when you were a kid, like, do you remember your first experience with music and what was that like?
Oh, yeah. Well, there were two profound experiences. One was my best friend was doing music, and so I wanted to do it. So that's how kids are. But really, when I decided that I wanted to study music seriously, and this ties into a project that I'm trying to develop, which, okay, it's not here yet. So I guess I shouldn't have brought it up. But anyway, I was 7 years old. And I grew up in Canada, in Vancouver, and they used to bring like chamber musicians to come and play for us live in the school gym. And I remember being mesmerized by the sound of the flute and thinking that is so cool. I want to know how to do that. I want to know how to play that. And that sound was captivating to me. And because I was big for my age, I actually could study the flute at 7, which is kind of unusual. And so my mom helped me do that. And so I started studying already at the age of 7 after hearing that concert at school.
Oh, that's so neat. And what about you, Norman?
My first memories of music are actually of musicals, Sound of Music, stuff like that when I was quite young. And I don't know, maybe I was 4 or 5 years old. And then my father is a minister. And so I grew up with all kinds of different music in the church. And so I was very closely related to those types of things. But my first memories of music were musicals, and I would try to imitate what I heard. I didn't know I could actually do it. I just did it because, kids, we just go for it. Yeah. And so that was my kind of initiation into music, and it started with that. I think it started with The Sound of Music.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yeah. Which is I love that movie. Yeah, it's so good.
I didn't know that.
So,
yeah.
Did you when you were kids and you're excited about this, did your parents recognize that and say, okay, I want to put my kids in lessons of some sort? Did you ask, like, how did this start to kind of transition where you started to say, okay, I think I don't just like this, but maybe I want to be doing a little bit more kind of early on?
Well, my mom's a doctor, retired now, but she was a pianist and understood the value of classical music in early childhood development and just the beauty of it. And so she was definitely like the route to approach. My father is a wonderful person, but he's Greek and definitely wanted me to study more like engineering or mathematics or something science-based. Mm-hmm. And so, no, but she definitely went with me on it and was always very supportive of me studying music. And like right when I was 7, I said, okay, I want to learn how to do this. And so she found a local music teacher and it just went from there. Yeah.
Yep.
And what about you, Norman?
For me, my family, there are a lot of singers in my family. So my dad has a great voice. We sound quite similar, actually. We sound very similar. And then that side of the family is where I got the whatever voice I have. That's where I got it from. And so when I came along and started being interested in music, being interested in singing, these types of things, my dad didn't want to push me too hard too soon. He didn't want me to, sometimes kids get stuck in music lessons or they get miserable or they get burned out or any number of things. And so they didn't want to push me too hard. So it was more that I was just around music a lot. I listened to, I developed actually an early kind of appreciation and love for opera in my kind of mid-teens, 14, 15, 16 years old. And so I would listen with my aunt, my dad's sister. We would listen to opera for hours. And so that's kind of how I, obviously I was a very popular individual.
It's not only, music as a whole, whether you're singing or you're playing an instrument, but opera is very specific.
It's very specific.
Yeah. I don't know anything about opera. Is that something where a lot of people go into opera because their voice is able to do that, or you train it to do that? I mean, obviously there's always training, but can anyone say, okay, I want to sing opera, or was that something that both of you were like, I had the ability to do that?
I mean, I didn't want to be an opera singer. Yeah. I was actually concurrent to my flute studies. I was studying drama and acting, and so I wanted to be an actor. And my mom found an audition in the local paper and said, "Hey, you should audition for this, show they're doing at the local theater." And I was like, "Okay." I think I was like 12 at this point. I've been studying music, studying drama for 5 years at this point, and I went into the audition ready with a monologue from Shakespeare, and they were like, "Oh no, this is a musical theater audition and you're gonna have to sing for us." And I was like, "What?" And so I sang something a cappella, and then they were like, "You've got a pretty good voice. We have a theater camp for kids." I was also really popular. And you should come back this summer and you should be in our musical theater camp for kids. And so I did that. And I did that for a couple of summers. And there was a woman there who heard me and said, your voice is so powerful and is so big, especially for a kid. I don't really see you doing musicals. I really see you doing opera. And I was like, I don't have a context for this. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that doesn't sound very cool. Like, I don't care about that. And interestingly enough, I wouldn't have pursued this route, except that she insisted the following summer when I went back for kids camp and said, "Listen, you have this voice. I'm going to put you in touch with a really good teacher that I know, local teacher. And he probably won't have time to take you on, but if he does, he's the one you should study with." And, I was still a kid, so I couldn't drive. I couldn't get to the lessons. My mom had to drive me into the big city because we lived in the suburbs. And I sang for this teacher and he was like, "Okay, I'll teach you." And so that's how my journey started. It wasn't even something that I really anticipated or wanted or knew anything about. I wasn't like Norman getting this amazing, education with his aunt, listening to all the great singers.
Well, it's just listening, really. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it does inform your ear.
Totally.
So I was definitely more like, oh no, I want to be on Broadway and I want to be on TV and I want to be in film. And I have no interest. I don't even know what that is. What is opera? And so, but then I fell in love with it after I started studying. And to answer your question, I don't know if anybody can sing opera. What do you think?
I think, at least in my opinion, it is it doesn't mean anything different in the sense of one voice is greater than another. It just means that there's a natural kind of facility or capacity for a voice to do that kind of thing. The training is different.
Oh yeah. And extensive.
But it's extensive. Yeah. But because there is no microphones, it's just pure projection. So you have to be able to. This is the way you use your body, the way you use your voice, but then there has to be that natural kind of ability to do that.
And it's extremely athletic.
I mean, all singing is extremely athletic. Because your body's your instrument. Yeah. Your body's your instrument. So, I don't think just anybody can sing opera. It's definitely a certain kind of.
I think it'd be the same as anybody could probably play the notes on a piano. I mean, everybody has a voice, but the dedication that it takes to really train that voice out to its utmost capacity just takes a kind of passion for it that even if maybe you had the voice, you're like, I'm not going to dedicate myself.
I don't want to use that much time.
Yeah, because we never stop studying, you never stop improving. We still take voice lessons. We still do coaching, so when you do this, you are signing up. If you really want to make this your almost like your lifestyle, because it is kind of like a weird way to live. We're very nomadic and you are signing up for a 30-year journey of being a student in one sense. And that's an amazing way to live, but it's also a very challenging way to live. There's never really an arrival point in one sense.
You kind of always feel like you're moving
pursuing.
You're pursuing something.
Yeah. And I was telling you both earlier that my background's in dance. So I went to college for dance. And so it's, any type of the performing arts is always a challenge.
Yes.
Where was the point for each of you that you decided, I want to fully pursue this. I want to do this professionally. I'm going to put everything into it. Was there kind of a moment for you that you were like, I'm going to do this full throttle?
Do you want to answer yours first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mine was actually, I actually had already been doing the job for about 5 or 6 years before I actually made the commitment and said, okay, I actually want to do this in the long term. I started out in my education. I started studying to be an opera singer. I didn't actually think I could do it as a profession. I loved it, and I loved to sing, and I worked hard on my voice. But I didn't actually think I could do this professionally. And so I went into my education, became a music major because I didn't know anything else to do. And so I thought, okay, I'll start as this, I'll figure out what I want to do, and then I'll start doing that. And so I went through my bachelor's degree. I just stayed in it. I was recruited by the University of Kentucky then after that to come to a master's degree. And then I went in and was recruited by one of the best opera companies in the world to be a part of their, it's a young artist training program, basically. And from there, I went straight into freelance professional work. And when I got into my late 20s, different professional things happened, different things took place, and I wanted to quit. And so I thought, my journey had run out on this. I was like, okay, the story's over. We'll move on to something else. And I was talking to my dad, and I was telling him, I was like, you know what? I think it's run its course. I think we're going to move on to, you don't know what, but we'll move on to something else. And he said, Norm, he said, you do what you want to do. He said, I think you just need to give it a little more time. He said, I don't think you've quite reached the reason to quit yet. He said, like I say, you do what you want, but just think about it. And so I thought about it for a little while, and I was like, you know what? I think he may be right. And so when that happened, I began to reevaluate how I was kind of pursuing the profession and all those things. And that's when I said, okay, yeah, boom. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to go for it and really, really strive to figure out how to do this job. And that was about 30 years old. So it took me a while to get to that kind of commitment.
What was the reason for you in your 20s to say, I think I'm done? What was there like, you were like, I'm bored of this. I've been doing this forever. Like, what was it?
No, it wasn't that I was bored. It was more that voices, everybody's voice, as they get older, the voice changes and it goes through different transitions. And so you're generally, my first kind of transition began when I was in my late 20s. It's a very normal thing. But when that happens, the voice kind of goes haywire and doesn't work quite right. And so you have to really focus and study the techniques and all that kind of stuff. So I started going through that period, and the work had slowed down because I had a lot. I was very fortunate, and I had a ton of work out of the gate, and I was just kind of going, and the work had begun to dry up, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to proceed, really. And so that's one of the main reasons I thought, okay, well, I guess it's over, because I didn't really know what the next step should be if I'm trying to really develop towards this goal. Yeah. And so, yeah, that would probably be the main reason that it took place. And then, I didn't quite understand how the business worked. I hadn't come to that realization yet. And so, there were just a lot of kind of things that came together at the same time. And so when I began to reevaluate, then I started planning better. And I started developing different ideas and different theories about how it was going to work for me if I was going to be successful. And so that's when I left. Before that, I based myself in the States. At that point, I moved to Europe. I moved to Germany, which is where I met Soula. Yep. So if I had quit, we wouldn't have met. So,
which Soula, before you go into your story, you're also a couple, which I love couple stories. So, and I'm also a everything happens for a reason person. So I think it's interesting that happened. So Soula, I would love for you to talk about what kind of made you decide, okay, I really want to pursue this. And then I'd love to talk a little bit about how the two of you met before we get into kind of our how-to today.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so, gosh, well, you know, as soon as I had started doing music, I felt like this is the thing that I wanted to do. I was really convinced of it. I thought, oh, I'll be an orchestra musician. I'll play the flute. I'll be an actor. Like nothing really was cohesive for me. And then I started studying opera, and that's when it brought everything together: the acting, the musical training, the musicianship. And I was also an athlete. Actually, nobody really knows that because I don't really talk about it because it sounds so funny, but I was a really great basketball player. I mean, as far as you can be in high school. And even to the point my coach told me I had to choose between music and basketball. And I was like, peace, I'm going to be a musician. So, you know, out of two impossible dreams, I think I'm going to choose that one. So anyway, I was extremely focused, you know, in childhood on being a great musician as much as I could, you know, with my, we're all limited in whatever we can produce and do. But for me, like, I'll just do this. I was like,
okay, how far down the road do you want to go?
Well, I was just going to say, because for me, it was like almost like it was easy. Like it was obvious. Like that's what I was going to do. And people were always saying that, oh, you know, you have this voice and you have this talent, you're just going to do it. And people project these things. And I had all these plans and I was going to do everything, you know, just according to what you're supposed to do. And I had scholarships for grad school and I was winning competitions and, you know, all of that stuff. But for me, the turning point came, I didn't prepare you for this, so sorry, Carrie, but like the week after I graduated school, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I had thyroid cancer, which, I mean, any kind of cancer is horrible and we hate it. For me, that was a particular challenge because it meant I had to have my throat cut open and go through all of that experience. And the thing that was really hard about it is that it kind of messed up my spinal structure a little bit. And it also meant that I lost a ton of weight because of the nature of the cancer. And so I emerged like with a new, really small body that couldn't handle the dramatic heft that I had been training under. Of course, it was rattling psychologically because it's like your body has betrayed you. All of my plans were ruined. Forget grad school, all that. I mean, all of it, it's like starting from zero, except that I still had my background in terms of my training and all of that part of my story. So at least I had that. But I was so discouraged because I had this setback. I didn't know what to do. And I, at that point, just thought, well, I'm not going to be defeated by this. I'm going to push through this. But I felt a lot of pressure that I don't really think was realistic. Now that looking back on how this industry works, and I just didn't have anybody to tell me differently. So in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, I have lost all this time. And in reality, I was 23. And so I sold my possessions. I did fundraising concerts. I packed up my stuff and I decided to go to Germany. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get out of here. It meant that I had to learn all new repertoire, which wasn't really suitable for my voice. And this will probably tie back into when we talk about how we started living opera, but basically you have the voice that you have. And so it didn't matter that I was sort of like faking it with, you know, the voice that I was trying to use to start my career. And I was successful in that. Like after a year and a half in Germany, I had my first jobs in really important debuts, important opera houses, important concert halls. But all of my motivation was fear-based. It was not based in the love of music anymore. It was also, I'm going to prove that I can do this. I'm not going to be defeated by this setback. And my whole intention for the career was not where it is today. And so that's a whole other story. But basically, I just had to make the commitment I was reacting to my circumstances, not saying I'm doing this because of the passion I have for this art form. That sort of got lost in that experience. And I pushed myself into a place of striving that was so unhealthy that when I finally reached my ultimate goal, it was unsatisfying. actually. I made it. I was a professional singer. I was earning money singing opera full time. I didn't have a ton of money, but I could do what I wanted. I could buy what I wanted. I had a nice apartment. I was singing the roles I wanted to sing. And this was so, but because my intentions were wrong, it was not ultimately satisfying. And so I had to sort of switch gears at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that both of you, I think that's pretty common. We all kind of have these moments in life where you kind of have to make that decision, and you each kind of had that. Yeah. For people watching, if you have questions, you can definitely ask. And Bonnie says hello.
Hi, Bonnie.
She said, little did baby Norm know when she was talking about your skill and your basketball hustle for you, Soula. So we love that as well. So before, again, we get into the how-to. So again, like I said, the two of you are a couple.
Yes.
How did you meet? Were you both singing opera to each other across the hall and like, this is the person?
No.
No.
There's actually a YouTube video on our YouTube channel about how we became a couple.
Yeah, because it was a special situation.
Yeah. Well, so quickly, just in Germany, they have systems where you can be a full-time employee of a theater. And so Norman and I ended up being full-time employees at the same theater. That's how we met.
Yes.
And doing the same productions and stuff like that.
So we were working together.
Yeah.
So,
but we're also living in the same city. Like, you have a permanent contract. So it's a bit like, if this doesn't go right, you have to, you're stuck with that person. And so,
that's right.
I thought he was cute, and we happened to meet one day in the local train station. And that's not as weird as it sounds. It's kind of like a central part of the structure of the city. So, and we were both getting groceries, and I was like, hey, we should go eat dinner instead of having, groceries and going to our houses. And he's like, okay. So we went out and we had like a 3-hour conversation, and it was really great. And then he bought me dinner, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that was a date. and he was like, it wasn't a date. And that's true. And you defend your position.
I did not think that was a date.
Yeah. And then I texted him, I was like,
I'm not saying
that was so much fun.
I'm not saying
we should do it again. And he was like, he was like that emoji that's not even like neutral. He was that emoji where everything is like a straight line.
Yeah, and just like indifferent.
All right, somebody can put that in the comments. You know what I'm talking about. He was that emoji towards me.
I was.
And
but,
Norman, we want to know why. What? Come on, Soula's this beautiful, talented person. Were you like, I'm focusing on my stuff? Like, what was,
Remember a lot of stuff I told you about my paths? Crazy.
I was not convinced that I needed to be involved with that level of.
It's high level.
It was high level. So, so I had come, when you freelance, you're in one place for, 6 weeks. 2 months, and then you move on to the next job. And so I didn't want to, and I didn't expect to stay as long as I stayed in Leipzig. I thought I'd be there a year, maybe 2 years tops, which obviously that's a more time than normal.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that was how I was thinking. I was literally there to work and figure out how to do this job. And so I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to meet somebody and so, but that's how life is. It comes along and bam, you get slapped upside the head. And eventually you wake up. It took me a little longer.
I have to do the tagline though. I'm sorry. This will be a t-shirt one day for Living Opera.
This is going to be a t-shirt for sure.
So we went out for this thing, and I texted him midweek, and I was like, oh gosh, that was so fun. And, I like you. Like, maybe we could do it again. And he's like, I do not share those feelings. I do not share those feelings.
I didn't even use a contraction.
No. I do not share those feelings.
I was extremely
clear.
Share
those feelings. That's such a weird thing to say.
I don't even know why I said that.
Oh my! Soula, were you like, you know what? Whatever. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. And there was another guy that wanted to date me, and I was like, forget this. And what the thing was with Norman is that doesn't work with him. He saw me parading this other guy around. He's like, I don't care. He just like, I just don't care. That's how he's amazing. I care about everything. He cares about almost nothing. And that's why we're good together.
Almost.
I just want
there are things I care.
Amelia says this is her favorite story ever. So
thank you very much.
Yeah. And so then like he went away. He had another freelance job during his full-time contract.
In Switzerland.
He went to Switzerland. I was still staying in Germany doing my thing.
Yeah.
And then he came back. And then we started like hanging out every day. It was really weird. We started hanging out every day.
It was extremely strange. When I look back at it,
every
now and then I
recount
it, and I'm like, that was so
weird. Finally, after a month, like I confronted him after we'd gone out again, and I was like, "Listen, I still like you.
Yeah.
I think you like me because you're spending like every single day with me, like every day, and
Yeah.
we're doing like weird dates. We're not even doing like fun dates because we're in the same like small German town. So we're doing stuff like taking the tram all the way to the end of the line, turning around and coming back. Like why would you do that?
That was the whole.
Why would you like? It was not about the experience, and it was not about the action. It was about like literally sitting on the tram.
We're like this. We're like sitting there like this. How's it going?
Hey.
It's literally what it was.
So then I was like, listen, I still like you. And I think you like me. And he again said the same thing.
Oh.
I do not say it.
2 times. I do not share those feelings.
Again. And I was like.
That's right. That's right.
And then I was incensed. And then I was like, you know what?
And then I was incensed.
I was incensed. I was like, Norman.
That's a Dave Chappelle word. I feel like that's a Dave Chappelle
I feel like I pulled her. I was incensed.
Oh, okay, so now we got to forward a little bit because Norman, what was the moment you were like, I think I like this person?
About 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
And was Soula like, dude, I don't know.
I was so business at that point. I was like, look, I understand.
Yeah,
I won't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
It'll be professional at work. I'm going to need about 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. And then it'll be fine.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got to my door and we hugged goodbye, and then he grabbed me and he kissed me, and then I was like, now I don't know what's happening. But anyway, we've been together ever since.
It was mega confusing.
We've been together ever since.
And
we worked it out, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And we got engaged after like 18 months, right? And after like a year or something, and we've been together for 10 years. Yep. So
I love it.
We didn't suffer too hard through that, but
once we got it figured out, we were good.
Yeah,
we just had to get it.
Then it was all right.
Then we had to get it going.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
I love it. I love it. Such a good story. Oh. So I want to transition just a little bit. So we kind of titled this "How to Become a Professional Opera Singer," and this can again, we were saying earlier, I think professional singer, dancer, kind of performing arts. We have a lot of people that maybe are still in college and they're graduating now with an art degree. Yeah. We're in this kind of crazy time. Looking back and what you've done, what are some tips that you would suggest that for people that are like, I want to do this full time because music is hard enough, but opera is even smaller of a space.
Right.
Yeah. So what are some tips that you have?
Well, one of the things, because we've talked and we have experienced so many different things on the spectrum of either success or I wouldn't even call it failure, but you could call it failure in this business.
I call it like redirection. Just to another
I think one of the main things that you have to remember about our particular industry, it's probably true for all businesses, but it's certainly true for ours, which is there is no formula to success. Yep. Everybody has their own way to the success of it. There may be opportunities that will come along that can help you. But number one, opportunities don't guarantee success. Yeah. Just like not having those opportunities don't guarantee failure. It really is individual. It really is, okay, how do I take the steps that I have, the access, the opportunities, whatever they are, the talents that I have, and shape them and focus them in a direction. Yeah. And so that would be the first thing. And we talk to a lot of singers who they get in their, even some in their early 20s who are just finishing bachelor's degrees, and they're thinking, we've had them say this. It's incredible. They're like, it's too late for me.
I thought that myself.
Yeah, and she thought. We're like, well, no, that isn't true at all. And so that would be the first thing. Number one, there is no formula to success. There are steps along the way. And then number two, focus on your skills.
Yes.
Focus on your skills. Your talent is the beginning. Your talent is what separates you out. Your talent is what draws attention, especially at the beginning. But your skills is what's going to separate you into that next level of professionalism. Your skill set, what you can do, and the complexity, the fullness of your skill set. So if you are a stage performer in any capacity, as a singer, as an actor, as a dancer, all of it. If you are a stage performer, then what are the skills for whatever discipline you do? What are the skills you have to develop? And you develop all of them.
Yeah.
So as a singer, it's not just I've got to work very hard on my voice, but I have to work hard on my mentality. I have to work hard on my performance mentality. I have to work hard on languages. I have to work hard on the ways of acting on stage. Even as an operatic singer, we do act where it's a very intense thing. Yeah. And so you have to develop, like any other discipline, you have to develop a ton of skills. Your skill set has to be huge, and skill set development takes time. Mm-hmm. And so to kind of propagate that people are supposed to be ready when they're 23, 24, and 25 years old is actually kind of ludicrous. It's ridiculous. It doesn't mean they're not talented or good enough to be somewhere. That's not what I mean. But to say someone is supposed to be a finished product, well, none of us are finished product. I mean, we spend a lifetime moving forward. And so I think those are two of the main things for what we do. Which is, so, it's not formulaic. Develop your skill set and don't lose hope. Keep going. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more and then I'm done. Develop your advisors, your team of people.
Yeah, you need a team.
You need a team of people. It will not be big. It'll be small. But you need a team of people to advise you and to kind of speak into your life, and who can train you, who can teach you, who can advise you, who can build you up. And I don't mean not necessarily criticize, because we need that critical thinking to say, that's not as good, go that way. And but that is building up as long as it has the right intent behind it.
Yes.
And so that's a huge one as well. Who you choose to surround yourself with. And that's a process, and it changes over time. But nonetheless, that's always something that's very important. So absolutely. I would say those 3 or 4 things are quite big.
Absolutely. The other thing I would add to that is you have to put yourself in the right spheres of influence as best you can. I know not everybody, for example, can do what I did. And it wasn't easy. I mean, but moving, to another continent. But I made a calculated decision saying, look, like this, I was talking to somebody I was mentoring today. The desire of my heart was to go to Italy. But then once I learned more about the Italian opera market, I was like, well, I think I'll have a better chance of breaking in to the European opera market if I go to Germany, because they have like over 80 opera houses in Germany alone. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to go to the market with the highest concentration of, the largest labor market basically for what I do. And I'm going to see if I can make it there. And then the other thing was I need to immerse myself in what this actually looks like in the place where it originated. So it's like, I know a lot of people go to New York or LA to be an actor. Well, in one sense, that makes sense. That's where the highest concentration of creativity is for that field still. And for us, that would probably be like Berlin or Vienna, because that just is the highest concentration of activity for what we do. And it is very important to actually witness that in real time, just so you inform yourself. So for me, when I went to Germany, I had this like special discount card where I could go to the theater for 10 euros a night. So I was going like 5 times a week, like seeing everything I could. Also for my own context, like to see, do I have the skill set? Do I have what it takes? Do I want to do this? Because it's all theoretical until you're really in the midst of it. And then you see, gosh, maybe I can actually do this. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a lot of confidence. And so putting yourself in the right social context is important. Also because you meet people in the industry. That's where I got some of my first breaks, because I was just literally on the ground. And so it's like, I was there, not even because I was so much better, whatever. I was there. And that's the other thing. Like sometimes we tell people when we're teaching, if we want to sort of like boil this down to like some very basic things, and I think it's applicable for almost every industry, it's you need the natural talent for whatever it is, you need the skills, and then you need the right open doors. And I think everybody kind of knows that, but it's like we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I think it's very similar in any performing arts. Although, like you said, it's really in any industry
or like any industry. Yeah,
you're right. And you need all of it. Which that makes me question also about when you're doing like an audition for opera. Is that something where you normally have an agent? Can you just show up? Like, what are they looking for? How do you stand out like in the audition process?
Like, there are stages to auditioning as an opera singer, but if I just take it like from our level, because now we're singing, internationally, when you're a young singer, I don't know how many young singers are going to catch this. But since this is called the branding connection, it kind of ties into what we're trying to teach people from a best case scenario standpoint. You need to give your audience, which is like people want to hire you, a snapshot of who you are. You don't want to make it confusing. And so when he goes to an audition, when I go to an audition, we have very special, even within opera is very specialized. So I specialize in German opera from a certain era. And so I bring just that rep. That's what I bring. The auditions are arranged by management. We have management in Germany. And to get those elite auditions like Paris Opera, London, in New York, Milan, whatever, you do need somebody who helps you open that door. It's very unusual for you to be able to facilitate that yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think about in the dance world, they now talk about you need to be good at everything.
Yeah.
You can't just say, I want to be a musical theater dancer. You've got to do hip hop. You've got to do Africa. You've got to do tap. You've got to do acrobatics. But for opera, you're actually saying find a niche and kind of focus in that area.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, eventually.
Yeah. There's a specificity that's at the beginning. Because people need and that Soula said it, they need a very clear, you have 10 minutes to make a very clear picture of who you are. And then what happens is once people get to know you, they get to know your work, they get to know then expansion happens.
They might trust you with
more. Then they'll trust you with other things and say, okay, let's give this a shot. But at the beginning.
Yeah. Now, we're not taught that in school, by the way. We're taught to have a broad repertoire. Mm-hmm. But we have found in the professional application of it that it's actually like niche down to go up.
Because kind of what they're taught is in at least what I was taught and from other younger singers that we've talked to, they're still kind of taught the same things, which is 5 different pieces, 3 to 4, if not 5 different languages.
Yeah.
And then of different composers. And I understand that because that gives you a great flexibility, but sometimes that translates into a confusion for a person that's trying to hire you. And it reads like that you're saying, I actually don't know who I am as a singer.
Yeah.
Even though you can sing all those things and you may sing them all very well, sometimes that translates into, and that's happened to me. I say that because that's happened to me.
Yeah.
I don't think that person knows who they are as an artist.
Yeah.
And so we kind of developed ways, okay, how can we simplify this and clarify it, especially for young singers, to say, okay, let's do this. Let's shrink that list down. Yeah. Instead of going for 5, maybe go for 3.
Yeah.
Bring it closer together. And then boom, this is who you are. Streamline it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I could not agree more with you. I mean, obviously, I'm a branding person, so I like you said, it's good to be versatile, that you have the ability and you're always learning new things. Mm-hmm. But you're right. If somebody's hiring for a specific role, they want the best person in that role, not somebody who is like, well, I can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
They really want the right.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of a breakthrough, this is something that we teach on. I guess we're going to teach on it as well.
Are we?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about the fact that like, when you think about, we have some projects coming through Living Opera. So I was like, did we teach on this already? Because it feels like we did. Oh, no, that's coming. When we talk about how singers should think about their voice as a product, we give examples out of the business world, saying like, when you think about, I don't know, what's a big brand? Kraft.
Well, you can use.
What's the first thing people think about when they hear the name Kraft?
Yeah.
Cheese.
I think a cheese. I think a cheese.
Yeah, right. But they do other products very well. But they started with one product and did it amazingly well. People get hooked on the brand, saying, I can trust them to deliver this kind of quality, this kind of product. And it doesn't, it works similarly in the arts. And I think there's a lot of sort of resistance to that, because we're afraid that if we start entertaining these kind of thoughts, it's going to affect our artistry. But to the contrary, it gives us the freedom to be completely free, because there's a framework in which people can understand us, know us, and hire us. And then I can come and be as wild and artistic and creative as I want, because I have a job. I have a platform. Somebody has hired me because they've understood me. I've broken in. And it's that sort of initial breakthrough that everybody needs when they're starting out in any field. I mean, we met a wonderful person who had studied law, but was selling us shoes in an outlet mall, because nobody had ever taught them that this is so important in every industry, that people have to want to hire you for your specialization.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So,
I personally, yes, that's what I talk about all the time. You're right. I think so many people are afraid because they feel like if they go too niche, then I might miss out on something. But like you said, I agree with you. When you go a little bit more niche, people are like, oh, that's what that person does.
You want to be the person that they're like, I want, what's some more, I don't know, like, I want that person there. I know them for this. And yes, maybe you feel limited by that artist, but do you want a breakthrough or not? Like, I want to be hired and then do so well in those opportunities I've been given that people are like, what else can you do? That's happened to both of us.
Yes.
That's actually how careers are built. Generally, that's how careers are built. Rarely is it built the opposite way. Generally, it's built, boom, we do this thing. We build a reputation for that thing. And then all of a sudden people go, okay, now we've trusted them at this level in a bunch of different places. And now let's build on that.
Yeah.
So,
100% agree.
Clarity of message.
It is. And, the other thing I want to talk about that I think, when I was in college, they didn't really talk about it, is the financial piece. I don't know if this happens in opera, you tell me, but a lot of times what would happen in dance is there were opportunities that were not paid. And artists are like, well, I just want to do the art. I just want to be creative. But then they're that kind of stereotypical struggling artist. So how were you able, or how can people be able to find opportunities where they are valued, they are getting paid? And is it something where most people have to have another job? Like, what's kind of the situation so that you can make a full-time living out of this? And do the thing that you want to do?
Well, oh my, that's a huge question. That's a great question. Well, first of all, one of the things that we try and talk about is, we don't talk about it in terms of it seems like when we talk about this, then we contradict ourselves with what we just talked about. But that's not what we mean.
I don't know what you're about to say.
I know. Well, what I'm saying is this. So, we just talked about being very clear and niching down, basically. But then there's the other side of it, which is we want singers, artists, period, to feel empowered to explore all of the talents and ideas that they have. Yeah. People are not one-dimensional. And so one of the things that we as singers, we'll just use us in our situation as an example. And this is something that we have grown more and more frustrated with. When as singers, people will tell us when we talk about thinking about doing other projects on the side and other ideas and this kind of thing. Well, can you do that? Or they'll say, well, then you're not really, ultimately they've come to the conclusion that you're not a serious singer. You're not a serious artist when you are multitasking. And what we say to that is, well, if you look at instrumentalists and you look at actually many other artists other than singers, they're doing 3, 4, 5, 6 other things simultaneously. Yeah. And and they never hear, oh, you're not a serious artist. So what is the difference for them and for the singer?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about focus, that's something you can talk about. But you can say, because what we're not saying when we talk about multitasking is ignore your artistry, ignore your gift, ignore your skills. That's not what we're saying. You've got to be extremely focused. You have extremely determined, and you have to have those goals out in front of you that you are striving for. So you have to work very hard.
Yes.
And so that is not what we're talking about. But what we are saying is you have other things in you. You have a ton of stuff in you. As you're working on these things, and I think it's conducive because when you're creative things will come out. You know, when you're constantly in a state of creativity, there will be other kinds of things that you want to create that you'll find, and they may surprise you. You go, oh, I didn't even know that was in there. And so we want to suggest to people that actually broadens you as an artist. It broadens you to create more things. It broadens you to extend your viewpoints out into the world, and as opposed to confining yourself in this slim little thing with blinders on. Again, not talking about focus. I'm not talking about work ethic. You work very hard. But at least to me, I always thought that an artist, the more that came in, the more life that was lived, the greater our art was, the greater what we expressed was, the greater our capacity was, the greater our understanding was. And so that's kind of, when it comes to that, that's where we start with, how do we figure out how to make this as a living?
Yeah.
We want people to, and maybe you'll have to do it in process, and you will, but nonetheless, if I don't have that in my mind at all, then it's going to limit me in where I can go.
Absolutely. And I think another thing
Did I say that right?
Yeah, that was
Did
great.
that make sense?
I think another thing that we have to really pay attention to and be aware of, and it's not that it's coming, it's already here.
Yeah.
We are witnessing pretty much the end of major conglomeration when it comes to the arts in general. Major record labels, streaming platforms have changed everything when it comes to, a record deal. A record deal in classical music anymore is a promotional tool. You're not making money off of that. I can just say, like, Norman had a recording, and after 3 years, can I say how much money you made?
Oh,
on royalties, he got 50 euros. 50.
Yeah,
that's about like $60.
That was hilarious.
American.
That was hilarious.
So, we're not, that's not, you don't do that for the money. But the thing is, we know people who are in generally, the more lucrative side, which is pop music and stuff like that. And we have been told that this model is coming to pop music as well. And their advice is build up your media following, build up, and maybe even any venture capital you might want to get, build up your social media following, build your reach out as far as you can, because the future of entertainment and the music industry is subscription based. So basically, if you want to monetize your art, what you're going to have to do is create a tribe of people around you that are willing to pay you for your art as one stream of income. That's going to be one stream of income, something subscription based. People are willing to buy your music directly from you. And then in addition to when you perform at major institutions, so when we sing, wherever we sing, what's the opera company? I can't remember. Let's say we sing at the Metropolitan Opera. I don't know. Let's put that into the atmosphere. So, so what happens. So in addition to that, and one of the things that we try to teach singers when we talk to them is build multiple income streams. Do it. We are seeing the absolute catastrophic effects of singers being taught they can only have one income stream right now because there are no public performances. And people are facing financial ruin in the classical music industry because we were taught this. And this is something,
especially as freelance artists.
I was passionate about it before, but I'm extra passionate about it now because I'm seeing people who have the capacity to build amazing brands and build amazing careers who are being forced to do things completely outside. I mean, if you're telling me that I'm not a serious artist because I teach career and branding and counseling, and I teach voice, and I have an online platform, and I have a brand, and I do TV moderation from time to time, and all this kind of stuff, in addition to my opera singing, and I'm not a serious artist because I earn money from those different streams, and then you're not going to help me pay my bills during COVID-19. Not really sure what to do with that.
Get them.
Not real sure.
Get them.
No, but I mean, people are suffering.
Boom.
People are
Drop
suffering.
it. People are suffering.
People are suffering, and like we're in the middle of a lot of.
I would drop my mic, but I don't want to hurt.
Well, yeah, we don't want to hurt. We just got this mic, and also we're not performing right now, right? So we don't do that. But like people are suffering, and we have to break down these kind of fallacies because it is ludicrous that somebody who is in business, like any entrepreneur worth their salt is like constantly thinking like, how can I build this new brand? How can I build this new product? Oh, what can I, and there's nothing wrong with that because they are creators. Yep. Entrepreneurship, branding, business is about solving problems. One of the problems that we solve is people's lack of joy and hope. They come to our show and hopefully feel uplifted afterwards. It's part of my job. Yeah. Yep. That's one of the things that we're gifted to do. My goodness, that's just amazing that we get to do that. And this is what we teach on our platform, Living Opera, also for the young opera singers. Yeah. But we don't just have opera singers on our platform. That's what's so amazing about it, because the principles are sort of universal and they're broad. We have dancers, we have instrumentalists, we have people in business, we have many different streams. And I think that's super amazing because there are universals anytime you want to create something new. Yep. And we can sort of follow those principles together and grow together.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear two people in the arts really get it, because it is important to understand branding and marketing and business, because you do want to make money from it. If that's something you love. And I love you were talking about too, kind of that focus with being open. And I remember when I graduated college as a dance major, my professor told me, she was like, Carrie, you're so focused. That's great. She's like, but don't get so focused that you don't allow other opportunities to come in.
Good for your teacher.
Yeah. And I keep that still to this day, many years later, because I think it's exactly what you're saying. You can have a goal, but there could be other even better opportunities that come along because of other things you're doing. And so to kind of stay open to that, which is really good. And I want to transition to your Living Opera platform now, which is something that has come about as what we were just talking about. It's another stream. It's another thing for you to do. You've kind of utilized all of this time during COVID-19 in a great way. So yeah, tell us more about what it is and what it's like.
Would you want to go first? Or you want me?
I'll just say it started as a reaction and reaction to
That's
your.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh,
boom!
Those are just so cute. I love it.
I think it's this. I think it's because we're connected in our brains.
It's like we're connected
right
in
here.
Our brain.
We have the same. Yeah. This is our. By the way, next Living Opera purchase. Let's figure this out.
I'm so sorry, guys.
Watching, they were like, "We can't hear you." I was like, "You need a headset," and then they can't put that in. So it's adorable.
Sorry.
Next thing, headsets. Okay.
Hideous. Yeah.
So and go.
Living Opera started as a reaction to certain. We've been doing Living Opera since January of 2019. And it didn't have a name when we started. It was just like, we literally
live video us.
No, you know how it actually started? Like, we never talk about this, but we were stuck in Europe for Christmas and we were alone. And we thought, how can we just bring joy to our families and just have some fun? It's another Christmas by ourselves, because typically we're performing. I'm not complaining, but it's just the reality. It gets kind of long and lonely after a while. 10
years before we came home for Christmas.
Yeah. So like, it was just hard. So we were sitting there and I was like, what if we just did like live Christmas caroling? That'd be super funny. Let's just do that. And I just noticed that like we got to reach so many different people that we don't normally reach in our families. And I was like, that's neat. And then I was like, Norman, I don't know. I always get questions via social media from younger singers. And I was like, what if we just answered them live? I literally remember putting an Instagram story up saying, would you like us to answer your questions live? And the overwhelming response was yes. And not that we had such a huge audience, but we had enough that I was like, well, this benefits just like 5 or 6 people. I don't care. This is like, we want to see change in this industry and speak openly about our experiences, because Norman, we both of us had 2 pretty common experiences. I'll tell about mine and you should tell about yours. Like after I came back from this cancer thing and I had already had my career for several years, my real voice started to kick in. And my real voice is big and hard and to manage and unruly. And I was like, oh.
Heavens.
I can't keep singing this thing over here that I've been singing. I don't know what to do. And so I pulled out of certain contracts. I pulled out of that direction. And we were fortunate to find an amazing voice teacher. And he literally rebuilt my voice. But we had to make the decision. We had to make the decision together, financially, of course, because canceled contracts, emotionally, because it meant I was going to be rebuilding. And that's always scary and like weird after you've already had a career to do that. And say, I'm going to start from zero and basically be a student again. All right. And then he's going to support me through it. And then that he was going to take on the workload basically, because I wouldn't be contributing for a couple of years. And so, but we decided like, this is part of what it means to be an artist, is to discover your true voice. We're going to make the investment. It's okay. But through that, certain experiences happened because we were traveling around and I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. Sometimes didn't speak the language where we were. So it would just be like him and me in some foreign country, him working and me by myself, hanging around
in the apartment.
Like, what do I do with my life? Really for real, so I've been there in that kind of experience. And then for Norman, because all this pressure, social media has been so integral in us building certain things. We didn't even realize it, but I put some videos of Norman on YouTube and a famous singer saw them. And she was like, I want him for 4 productions. It skyrocketed his career. It just overnight practically. But with that also comes the visibility and the pressure, which he wasn't necessarily ready for internally. And so that's what I wanted you to talk about, because that's how Living Opera really started.
Well, it was basically what we found as we would go through the business and we would talk to people. We talked to colleagues.
Your experience though.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to come to that. But it just in general. Experience. Yeah. But with my experience, which I'll talk about in just a second, and actually it wasn't just my experience. It was actually a lot of other experiences that people would not necessarily talk about these things openly. And I understood why. But just for me, what happened is I began to experience something I had never experienced before. And I'd been doing the job for 12, 13, 14, 15 years already, performed a ton. And all of a sudden I started struggling and trying to figure out, okay, I'm dealing with performance anxiety, and it's far more intense than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. You're always nervous.
Everybody's nervous. I'm not talking about nerves. Nerves are fine. Nerves are normal. But they, and I began to go through this huge cycle of performance anxiety, and it got more and more intense and and there wasn't really, I couldn't find any logical reason why that was happening. Yeah. I was like, there's nothing's changed. I'm good at my job. It's all fine and all the things or whatever. And so I began to go through this process that was probably about 2 to 2.5 years. And it got to a point where she would have to be literally on the side of the stage, or I couldn't walk out on stage. She was like, and once I got out there and got going, I would actually be fine. Yeah. And for the most part, it never affected my performances. And I am, in general, by nature, I'm a very private person. And so I would go and do these things, and nobody knew I was experiencing any of this. And I certainly didn't tell anybody. But after about 2.5 years of this, she was like, okay, we've got to deal with this situation. We've got to figure this out.
I would like to sing and do my own thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can't, this is not sustainable. So for me, we found somebody to talk to, and now it's fine. It's normal again, and it's good.
It's amazing.
It's actually even better than it was before. So, but coming out of that process, we began to go around number one, I became a little more open, but not in the sense of, hey, let's talk about performance anxiety. I don't mean that, but it was funny because that would begin to come up in conversations when I would have, and so I would talk to people, colleagues, and they would say, oh yeah. And they would mention something about it. It's like, oh yeah, I've struggled with that. And and without fail, all of them said, oh yeah.
Oh, I have a therapist.
I have a therapist.
Whatever.
And there's one colleague who I was talking to, and her husband used to play with a very famous orchestra, one of the best on the planet, historically one of the greatest orchestras in the world. And she said, yes, that orchestra, the 80% of that orchestra is on some kind of medication for performance anxiety and for the pressure of performance. Yeah. And so I began to think about that. And I was like, I mean, I understand why, because, you know, when you show any kind of weakness, there can be ramifications. Somebody, you know, and I understand why the business would do that, because they are hiring you for a service and they need to be able to trust that you can walk on the stage and do it.
Yeah.
And so I understand their point of view. I understand why artists don't want to talk about that. And historically, there have been very famous singers who had horrifying performance anxiety. And so everybody knows that it exists, but there was no kind of open discussion. And so we kind of came at it from, okay, it seems to me, especially coming out on the other side, and it's fine now, it seems to me that we would be actually far better off if we just kind of opened a dialogue about this and said, hey guys, this is a real thing. This is something, and people that I know who struggle with it at far greater levels than I did.
And they have nowhere to go.
And had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Because somehow that it puts you in kind of this isolated perspective. And when in fact, all of your colleagues on some level are experiencing the same thing. And so, you know, when we began to have these conversations, you know, I started having people say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for talking about that. Because it helps me to know, I've had people say, you know, I'm right in the middle of that. And it's good to know that you came out on the other side and you're healthy and you're well and you can do it. I was like, yes. And so that, for me, that was the entry point for what we do. And seeing that we wanted to talk about the realities of our business, the good realities, the not so good realities, in a positive way, in a hopeful way, in an edifying, where we build people up. Not to bash the business. Anybody can bash the business. Yeah. Anybody can bash every business. There's not one business that you can't destroy. And so that's easy. Yeah. It's easy to destroy things. It's easy to be critical. It's easy to beat. That's nothing. Yeah. The challenge is facing the realities and the challenges of that thing and going, okay, how do I overcome this? And we overcome things better the more people are around us.
The more dialogue,
the more community there. Now, I still have to individually overcome that thing, right? But the more support and the more community there is, the more strength then you have because you know, one of the big things is that you know you're not alone in something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may be alone on that stage and you've got to execute, and there's nobody who can do it for you. Yeah. You've got to go do it. But
that's kind of like,
where
it like our I mean, well, first of all, like, we didn't even have a name for this thing. Like, when we started, eventually after a couple of months, I was like, oh, people keep on engaging with this. Like, should we call it a name? Like, should we have to give it a name? Like, so I asked the followers, like, what should we call this thing? And then we had people submit their ideas for names, and we chose one that we thought was the best for what we were trying to do. And there are a couple of things I like with the name Living Opera. What I really like about it is that if you're in Italy and you're speaking to an Italian person and you say opera, that's not a complete phrase for them. Opera lirica, lyric opera, means opera like what we think about it. So it's a translation problem, right? Mm-hmm. Opera as a word means to work or to labor. That's what it means. So you're a living work. You're a living work in progress. That's more of the meaning behind the name. And so when we are talking to students, when we're talking to our colleagues, we always go from a three-pronged approach. One is that we give good information. So we inform them of the realities. We give them realities, but we give it in such a way that we always work from a best case scenario standpoint. We equip them with any skills that we can help them develop. And then we empower them to go and stand on their own in the industry. We inform, we equip, and we empower. And that is our mandate with the project, because everybody is a work in progress. And so that's a little bit our mentality behind the project. And we're just going with it. I mean, like, we've been doing it for a year and a half. Like, we don't know what it's going to do necessarily. We're just, as things progress. What I love, I mean, I was literally in tears today And if I think about it, oh, it's happening again. So, okay, if I think about it, but like one of the things that's been so exciting is working from that framework. I've actually wanted to invite other artists who don't necessarily have the platform just to share their creativity. And so we have a project coming with 2 women in the community who have a specific experience, shared experience, and they were sharing, and I saw their faces, like they were just lighting up, and like somebody just wanted to hear from them because they have the authority to speak about that. They don't have to be singing on the stage of La Scala for us to think what they have to say is valuable, because I know it's going to help our community. And so that is so rewarding. And to keep seeing that happen and the fruit of that perpetuate within the community at all ages, all experience levels, that is like, it's super addictive also, because you're like, oh my gosh, like that person is getting empowered. That person is doing that. That person started a YouTube channel. Oh, like that person is making money from their other job that they've just started to do. I mean, that is like, yeah, I just find that so exciting. And we like Living Opera became a business in April because we felt like that's what we were supposed to do. So like the whole journey of it, like it's
which was something we were always going to do.
Yeah.
Even before
this
like
happened. we had the plan to do it. We thought we were going to do it in Texas when we were singing at Houston Grand Opera, not in Montana at Norman Spokes, quarantined. But it doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, but I think, you know, COVID-19 has allowed people to be able to create. They have the time and the space, and I think that's incredible. And I love this kind of journey of you talking about not just with the art, but really you're talking about business, and now you're teaching others, encouraging others, and not just talking about music and how to get into the business, but also that mental part as well, which I'm always a big fan of too. So if people want to learn more about it, they want to connect with you, they have questions, where's the best place to do that?
I mean, we have a website. It's livingopera.org. We're really active on all like social media platforms, especially Instagram. That's definitely our happy place. And we always answer direct messages, and that's how we find a lot of people that end up being community members. Everything we do, like 99.9% of what we do is free, apart from when we do private consultations and voice lessons. And we are doing a pretty significant launch. It's going to be the first of its kind in our industry, but it's not quite there. It was supposed to be in April, but because of COVID-19, our web developer is having to scramble to do a bunch of different things, and like
we think it's going to be the first of its kind in our industry. I think so.
I think it is.
It's one of the few.
It's one of the few. Fine, Norman. Norman's the diplomat.
I'm always very diplomatic.
I'm the Greek business person. I'm like, it's the first of its kind.
Just in case.
And it's never been done before.
Just in case.
But like,
let's cover all our bases.
Like, get the lawyers out to get the transcript of this interview. No. But because of our careers, we can't be everywhere at once. We have to limit our teaching to like right now, just about 10 hours a week. Like we don't have the capacity, even right now when performances are canceled. The other thing is I don't want to build a relationship with people, have them rely on us. And then suddenly when I have to run over here and sing and, I was in Dubai and China and Italy and France all last year. Like, I don't want to be like, sorry, like you're just on your own. So we limit that capacity, that one-on-one stuff.
Exactly. We want to make sure, because we told people when we did this, we want to make sure that when this is over, our goal of doing this was that we would still be doing this. It was not a reaction to anything. This was something that was always planned, and we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah. But I think, our community knows that, because we've been doing it for a year and a half already. But again, I was just very mindful, like when we transitioned to being a business and doing paid services, because up until then we hadn't really been doing anything like that. And this was our timeline for the project. We also wanted to be mindful that we didn't want to take on a bunch of people and then suddenly let them down, because of our team jobs. Like, we know our capacity, and we're still learning as we go along. Like, the thing is, one of my goals with this is to know, is this even feasible? Like, can you build something like this and then maybe one day turn around and teach others how to do it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You find out, one of the things is, you're not right about everything. And that's not the point.
Wrong, but most.
The point is that you try, and then you actually create the conversations.
Yes.
You create the conversations, and through those conversations, you'll get to what works.
Yeah.
And what's right, and then you can go. And so I think that's been, you just have to kind of go for it.
Yeah.
You have to be as precise as you can be, but you also just have to go.
And I think the other thing too is like,
so
when you give of yourself, you start living a lifestyle of generosity. and that only helps you in your life, in every sense, in your art, in your relationships. And people are drawn to that. And that's something that we want to teach the people that we mentor that's something that we teach from it, whether you're a singer or not. Like, if you can go outside of yourself and be the solution, you will never run out of things to do. You'll never run out of opportunity. And that is like the most exciting and amazing way to live, because you are literally watching transformation every single day. And that's what we get to do.
Yeah.
In addition to,
like I said, I love the connection that the two of you have as a couple, as business partners, how you're kind of talking about this industry and really bringing in the business part, which is just so phenomenal. So I want to thank both of you for being here and sharing your story and your insight. And I look forward to seeing more about what you all do in the future. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thanks.